All right, I see some people popping in here, joining us on LinkedIn, and a few on YouTube. Per our big, ambitious social media dreams, Meg, I have been streaming more stuff to YouTube.
Ooh, nice.
I know, very exciting. Okay, great. Let's kick it off. I just had to relocate people from outside Tampa right now, and I had these grand ambitions of being able to do this stream from outside. And in the 5 minutes where Meg and I were just backstage, I was like, oh my God, it's so hot. I'm so uncomfortable. I need to go back into the AC.
I love it. And you're, how long are you in Tampa? You switch between Tampa and Chicago, and then like the third is just like all of your business travel.
And Montana. The third is Montana.
Montana, yeah.
Fourth is all of my crazy business travel. The 27th, I'm back in Chicago, but only for a few days. And then I'm at the CRO Summit, Pavilion CRO Summit in Denver. And then I'm at Outreach's event, Unleash back in Florida, actually, but in Fort Lauderdale. And then I have like 2 weeks where I get a chill before another event, but then I leave in July to go back to Denver for 4th of July weekend for the fish run in Boulder, and then I'm in Montana for a month. So it's, it's never ending. But I was saying before we went live that I'm especially excited because I extended this trip to be able to be in town for Melissa Gaglione's B2B on the Bay Yacht Club party tonight.
That's so exciting. It's funny because they reached out to me and I was like, yeah, no, I'm just too tired. So, but I don't know if you know that I lived in Tampa for 2 years after college. I went to UF. And it's so beautiful. Like I used to go sailing every Thursday, and I honestly though, after I was just in Florida for 4 weeks, you know this, and the last like week, I was like, oh yeah, this is why I don't like living here. Way too hot.
It's
like
so hot. Like oppressively hot.
Like can't function, can't think, have to take 4 showers a day hot.
It's crazy. I know. That's why I was like, oh, it won't be a big deal to do this outside because even though I'll sweat, I will still need to like shower before I go on this boat to sweat in a different outfit. So it's no big deal. But it was a mistake. It was a mistake. We have some of our favorites here. Hello, Hannah. Hello, Ryan. Hooray for tank tops and pink hair, purple hair.
I'm sad I like don't. I feel like it's like pink now.
It is pink.
I'm sure a lot of people saw my post about getting called out for wearing tank tops and especially pink tank tops. And I'm sad. I feel like I should only do content in pink tank tops now. But yeah, the tank top is a revolt, and it is intentional.
Well, we had that very, very funny chat in our like LinkedIn support group DMs about it doesn't really matter what you wear because it's like if your hands are showing, then it's like, well, like why are your fingers so long and slender and slutty? And then your like shoulders are showing. They're like those slutty shoulders are the only way that you get business. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
And now we like, even the guys are so funny. They're like, I'm about to post a slutty hands photo. I hope people can
so funny.
Like, yeah, can handle the slutty hands. So yeah, everyone is encouraged to post slutty hand and shoulders photos.
I love that. That's a weird angle. Okay, I did this like last minute adjustment to come inside.
It's giving like Blair Witch.
I know, but now my lighting like fall off though. Oh, that's a little bit better. But then every time I switch my lighting, my stupid fancy cameras, like, oh, is the lighting too bright? Let's adjust like, that for you. Don't worry, we'll help. And I'm like,
I have like
that's helpful.
So Leslie and I both work with the same kind of like social coach. I don't even brand coach, social coach.
Social. I have a different brand coach and a different brand strategist.
Can we say where he's from?
But I call him he's like he's my social media guru, my like clip farming guru.
Yeah.
I don't know. No, we have to get his permission before we like give away all the
Oh
details.
no, like I mean, I mean, you posted about it. I posted about it. Like we're working with a coach from OnlyFans, which is really interesting. And I remember when we first met him, or when we first like had the session, we did our like sales witches conference. We had 6 hours of content scheduled. Like each of us would present something, and he started presenting, and it turned into him presenting for 6 hours because we were like, we can't finish this. But I remember him talking about OnlyFans strategy, and we just had this moment. Like I think he had like left for a little bit, and we're like, to hear a man talk about OnlyFans content and like strategies that he uses to help women in that capacity for 6 hours, and for us to all feel like, I was like, there were literally no moments where I was like, ooh, that's touchy, I don't like the way he said that. I was like, wow, this man is like incredible.
It was incredible. The strategy was, I mean, it was so incredible that afterwards, all three of us engaged in a, like paid him money to help him translate some of those really unique strategies and like also like tried and true sort of like behavioral science things from the OF world into our world, which has been really fun. I've been doing I've been mostly focused on growing my YouTube first. That was like my first thing. And those views have consistently been going up. And then we just expanded to more video content on TikTok. That one, as you can attest, is TikTok's it's so hard to break into. It's so interesting, Meg, because everybody always talks about how hard YouTube is and that it's such a slow growth channel. And that's true. But like TikTok is also a very slow growth channel unless you're doing like the trends and the dances. And then then there are some faster paths to growth because you have a much higher probability of like viral content.
Yeah.
But for anybody that is doing, like TikTok always says that you show up to educate, inspire, and entertain. And anybody that is doing educate content on TikTok, which is like the most of what we're doing with like a side of like the entertainment.
Mine is not educational. Mine is the explorer persona. Yours is the educator. Yeah.
But those are the only three things. So it's educate, entertain, inspire. So it's not our personas. It's like the buckets that they put our content in, not how we would describe our own content, but how they put us in it. And like
I think I'm like educate, or I'm inspire and entertain right now.
Well, 100%. If you were doing real TikTok entertain content, you would be doing all of the like trends.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how they categorize it, not again how we categorize our own shit.
Okay, so I just started a really fun TikTok series called, it's not like called, but it basically starts with your unhinged permission slips. And I think my favorite one so far was like, this is your unhinged permission slip to book a fake doctor's appointment and instead just take a nap. But people were like, in this economy, and I'm like, how can you afford not to just do it? I was like, I can't afford a doctor's appointment with my fucking healthcare, but like, I can definitely afford fake doctor's appointments. Also, like, but it's funny because I was like, okay, this is actually a little educational. I'm not gonna lie. I, used to work in a role where in enablement, I'm sure your leadership roles were like, I feel like my job started at 6 p.m. because throughout the day, back-to-back meetings, and then whenever they literally cleared out the desk next to me so that, because the person next to me complained, because every time I was at my desk, people were sitting there asking for coaching, asking for feedback, and so I went so far. There's 2 strategies that I use to like get time back. I started booking fake meetings with other coworkers strategically, and we would literally just sit in conference rooms together and work. So we just had like an hour to work. And then one time I booked I like booked a fake conference and I just worked from home. Like, I'm the problem, but it was so effective.
I would say that the culture that you were working in was the problem. If you felt like in order to just get a little bit of focus time, you had to literally like put fake stuff on your calendar to be able to like have the not like have the courage isn't the right word, but you know what I mean, to be able to like stand on your business, to be like, yeah, I can't meet with you because I'm doing this. And I feel like so many cultures, not just that one, like do not respect time blocking, or like when their employees say, hey, like I am overwhelmed, I am having trouble focusing, or I'm having trouble with distraction, like I need support better managing my calendar, or I need support or like I need the backup from my manager for them to be like, yes, leave Leslie, leave Meg alone during these time blocks. And they say that they're going to do it, but then everybody just gets distracted by like false urgency and doesn't respect it.
I was like, have you seen that work? Because I need some help with that. But yeah, it was actually leadership, which was the issue. I remember one time I was in a meeting, and like this was a head of sales that, I mean, he was texting, slacking, never paying attention during meetings. And I was. But I got out of a meeting and he was like, hey, why haven't you responded to your email? Like the CEO emailed you 5 minutes ago. And I was like, I was in a meeting. And it was just like, honestly, I feel like a lot of people, I talk to sellers every day who are so like, can we talk about like Slack and anxiety? Like there's a certain weird aspect. Like I feel like raise your hand if you have like felt personally victimized by a Slack ping. Like by that, the sound of the Slack ping, you know, when you're like, you know, trying to focus, trying to get some real work done. But we live in these always on cultures which promise productivity, but actually like radically steal it.
Okay, I think it's insane that people keep their sound on their Slack. Like there's no reason for that. No reason. Nobody, not a single person in corporate America is doing such time sensitive work. Like I'm not even talking like the CEO of a Fortune 100 organization. Nobody is doing such time sensitive work that the best way for them to interact with their Slack is for their Slack to make a noise every time a message comes in. Like nobody could ever convince me that that is a healthy way to interact with a piece of technology. Like it's insane.
Yeah. And like I always tell people, y'all, we just need to remember real quick that we are not ambulance drivers. No one will die if we don't answer a Slack 5 minutes. No one will be injured if, you know, you send something the next morning versus the night of. But I think there's so many issues related to this. There's, you know, I think like the two biggest are just always on cultures where it's just such a norm to like respond immediately, is such an expectation that it really steals like any ability for people to have any sense of focus time. But also like this is a weird one, but one thing that I learned in consulting, I don't know if you had this lesson, I realized that like, especially for me, when I was setting my own timelines, expectations with clients, I would set expectations with clients that were meaningless. Like even, hey, I'll send this to you, you know, tomorrow. And then I realized it was way too much work. And then I was like dreading sending the email, like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, can I just have a few more days? And they're like, I remember one client was like, I'm going to be honest, I was like so surprised that you were going to get over so quickly. Like there's literally no, like you could do it by the end of the week. It really doesn't matter. And it was a big reflection around like the expectations that we set. And like, even just saying, hey, when do you need this by?
Yeah.
Is like such an empowering question.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm very good now. I was okay actually in my corporate job, but I'm very good now when like I'm not afraid of somebody else like trying to like call me out for not sending something like in what they think is a timely manner.
But how
But
do
I
you
mean, like, when do you, what is your timeline? When are you making this decision, or like when are you talking to Trisha that like you need to make sure that you have this in your inbox? And then
yeah.
I'll always ask like, okay, like looking at my because I time block everything, so I'm like looking at my calendar. Like I have 2 hours on Thursday afternoon. So if I get this over to you by end of day Thursday, is that fine? And then they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's totally fine. And then I immediately go and block the time in my calendar so that I don't then find myself not having set aside an appropriate amount of time to meet the deadline that I said I was going to meet. But it's a game changer to both like block the time so that you're not just putting things on a to-do list that like doesn't for most people, to-do lists are just like kind of fake because they're not actually like setting time aside to do the things on the to-do list. So they are creating just a list of things that will make them feel overwhelmed. But I think, yeah, communicating the deadlines and time blocking so that you are able to do what you say you are going to do decreases just like that sense of chaos and that sense of urgency in the way that
Yeah.
I'm able to run my own business.
So curious, I don't know if you experience this with people, but I mean, I feel like my like journey of time blocking has been a long one, but I feel like time blocking is probably the number one strategy that I teach sellers and sales teams that I know will have like probably the biggest impact on stress levels. And there it's kind of related to like to do kind of like how are you organizing your to-do list? How are you prioritizing things? Are you treating everything the same? But I feel like time blocking is so hard for people. Do you find that? I feel like it's like the number one thing that will make a difference, but also the number one thing that people just like completely, let go of
Yes.
the first time they.
I will tell you why, because I also do a ton of work with, I mean, like,
Yeah.
I've done a ton of work with the hundreds and hundreds of sellers that I managed for 15 years in leadership, and like now a ton of work with teams. It is because most people, when they think of time blocking, they immediately jump to more of the deep work style time blocking. And they think that that means they need to have like at least an hour, 2, 3 hours, which that's not the appropriate place to start. Like if time blocking is new to you as a dedicated habit, I think that people should go with Pomodoro.
Yeah.
Which is like the 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off.
Yes.
Related to that, and like one of the reasons I think Pomodoro works well to get into the habit is that people will say I'm time blocking, and I'll be like, cool, show me your calendar, and their calendar will be like, 10 a.m. to noon proposals, and then I'm like, oh, okay, like do you generally have 2 hours of proposals to do on Monday? And they're like, no, but I'm supposed to block time for it. And then I'm like, oh, okay. And like when you say proposals, does that mean like the slide deck that you send after a discovery call, or does that mean like an RFP, or does that mean an SOW?
You have proposals you need to do? Yeah.
Like I'm just like, what specifically does proposals mean? Why have you put it there? Why is it 2 hours? And I think, at least what I've seen, is that folks get it. Like they get the value of time blocking. They buy into why it would work, but they really struggle with the application.
Yeah. And so I'm actually hearing a few things that you're saying. Like, I definitely feel when you read books like, okay, like I was one of those people, I was like, read Deep Work once, and I was like, I have to change my entire life. Deep Work and Essentialism as well. And I was like, I need to go into the woods Like, I need to book a cabin. And like,
okay, I remember us having this discussion when I was at Inbound last year, because I remember I was waiting for Daniel Disney outside of the Isabella Gardner Museum, and we were having this entire discussion that then like rabbit holed into Thoreau, and I remember this.
and then we were like, I was like, Thoreau was the worst. He literally just stayed on his his mom brought him sandwiches. He was like, this was so hard. Yeah.
And I would agree. And Monica was like, I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt. And I was like, no, thank you.
Absolutely. We were like very anti-Thoreau. I was like, that book was bullshit. Like, absolutely not. This guy is like basically on, one of those little camping trips where you like camp in your backyard.
Except for in a like full house where somebody does your laundry and brings you all your meals and then takes your dishes and cleans them. Like glamping. It was like really hard. Glamping. It was like so hard, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wanted me to spend time alone with my thoughts.
Yeah, we're criticizing the book Walden by Thoreau. I just remember reading it. And also, how do people even find it interesting? I just remember literally the moment I stopped, because it was like a 3-page list of his like expenses, like acorns, 25 cents. And I'm just like, y'all, we need to touch some grass. And maybe just do what Thoreau did and like book some time in your friend's backyard and have your mom do your laundry and bring you sandwiches.
I mean, that sounds delightful.
Okay, but
go back to deep work, because
you did. Okay, wait, but actually, before we go to that, you actually did though have like a deep work little oasis writing your book. Did you even like write your book that much? But just like in the fairy forest, like meet with the fae.
Me?
Yeah, when you went to Ireland.
Oh, I have not gone yet.
Oh, I literally imagined this so vividly in my mind, Leslie.
Thank you for putting that into the world for me.
I literally I have vivid memories that I imagined that have not even happened of you walking through the forest. And I'm literally imagining the fae just like looking at you and like following you, and you look around, you're like, and they just,
gnashing their little teeth, and I'll be like, I brought you honey.
I have memories. I have visions of you like walking along the cliffside, wearing this like little like kind of like dress that I feel like I've seen you wear, and you're just like, looking like a writer with your book. I like have vivid memories that I've imagined.
I'm going in September though. You're right. It's just
yes, okay.
It's a premonition of what will happen versus what has actually happened. But I am going to Scotland in September,
yes.
Where I will start working on my next book, because I have no chill. And then I'm going to go to Glasgow for the weekend, and then I'm going to pop over to London and do a book launch party in London on the 16th of September.
Okay, I realized why I imagined that this had already happened, because I was like, you've talked about it, like, so, I mean, I have a vacation on Monday, and I don't have a flight booked. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I booked this in January, because I was doing my January goals, and something that like for the last 3 years had shown up on my January goals was like go to a druid retreat, or do some sort of like journaling retreat or writing retreat. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't have the capacity to do like both a druid retreat and a writing retreat, but why don't I go to the home of the druids and create my own itinerary and do a writing retreat? So it's going to be, I'm very, very, very excited about it.
Okay, before we go back to deep work, I think I just want to put this out in the universe that I think for our like 5-year anniversary of our Sales Witches retreat, we need to do like Sam Wayne, like a true witchy.
Oh, like go to Samhain.
Samhain. I don't know how to say
I thought he was like a place, and I was like, where's that? I'll go with you. Just tell me.
You're like, we'll go to Samhain.
It was already a yes.
I don't want to say this stuff, but yeah, I think
that would be so fun.
We should do something like that.
It's an easy for me.
Yeah, I feel like you're reading deep work, even like the people, those of us that are like glorifying Walden, which is basically where he just goes into the woods and is like, I discovered the key to everything. But when you when you go from like massive corporate capitalistic always on cultures and try to then shift into deep work, and
Yeah.
even like I think even like Atomic Habits, and there's like several books that are like, and the Clockwise app. Have you ever heard of the Clockwise app?
I have heard of it, but I've never used it.
But basically it uses AI to reorganize your calendar, and then to block 3 hours of focus time. But so what I was hearing you say is that like, I think people block too much time. You're not gonna, I don't know about you, but I'm not like focusing on something for 3 hours. I need to break it up into smaller things, like especially within our like rampant like ADHD culture. And then people don't have clarity on what they're working on. And I find that they're like, I'm going to like finish this entire thing. And like the thing is like 16 steps. And then they get overwhelmed, and then they find that they scroll on Instagram for an hour. And it's like, I feel like people don't know how to implement better time practices. So they end up just wasting time and then being like, time blocking doesn't work.
I'm curious if anybody that's joined us has read any of these books we're talking about, like Deep Work, Atomic Habits, Stacking, Essentialism. What was the one that I read last year that I hated? It had a the author's name was Jeff something. It had a black cover. I like despised it. We read it for business book club, or like 4-hour work week. Right? There's so many of these like quote unquote like self-help books.
I literally track all of the books that I read, and some of them I just don't finish, and I still write it, and I'm like, hate.
Yeah, like, DNF. That's what the like reader slang is in like the reader community. Did not finish. You DNF it.
Ooh.
Yeah, you got to start saying that. It's a DNF. They're like, what did you think of that? And like, it was a DNF, and people are like,
I love it. Andy Paul recommended a book to me a few years ago. Yeah. It is called Streaking, and not like
like
but creating streaks.
Talks about in Atomic Habits, and he calls it stacking.
So the thing about streaking that I actually found so valuable, so like Atomic Habits, I don't know about you, I found it very, very inspiring.
I loved it. I've read it 3 times. It's been less impactful each time I've read it because I realized how much I have matured as a professional in person. But yeah, I love it. I think it's I
love the ideas in it, and then I try to implement some, and I'm like, no. And streaking for me though solved a lot of the issues I had with stuff like Atomic Habits, because like whenever I would like kind of get up on a habit, I would just blame myself for not being disciplined enough or not being like good enough at habits. But streaking has this one strategy that's so valuable, and it says when you're implementing a new habit, so it's important to like this guy literally has like ran a mile per day for like 30 years.
Yeah.
But he says a lot of people start too big, which is exactly what you're saying with things like time blocking. So it's like, oh, I'm going to start with like 3 hours and I need like 9 hours of time blocks on my calendar. But he said if you don't finish a habit or if you don't continuously do it, it's because you're going too big. So literally then the next day, don't give up. All you have to do is simplify, 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 and simplify.
Yes.
Until like, and just make it easier for yourself. So even for example, with working out, and it's like, oh, I feel like I need to be working out for like an hour and like get this insane workout. And it's like, even if what if I just scale it down? What if I do 30 minutes? What if I do 10 minutes minimum? It's kind of like the 2-minute rule in Atomic Habits, which is like, what if instead of you're like, I'm going to do 3 hours, I'm just going to start with like 2 minutes of a thing.
Yes.
And I think even with like the Pomodoro method is actually almost like a version of the 2-minute rule for time management, I think, because it's like, what if instead of being like, I'm going to work consistently focus for 3 hours, which like, I don't know if you've tried to focus for 3 hours, but like, who does that? I don't. I definitely don't. You're crazy though. But also,
I will tell you how I got there though, when you finish your thought.
Yeah, I'm like, you've probably gone there for years. And now, okay, now I can focus for 3 hours, but I don't think about focus. I don't think about it as focusing for 3 hours. I think of it as the Pomodoro method, which is like, I'm literally going to like break it into like 6 steps. Also, sometimes I get super overwhelmed, and I've been getting ChatGPT to like help me break it down into steps, which is very helpful. And overall, like, yeah, love the 2-minute rule. And it's super interesting. Like, I think the, 2-minute rule for time blocking is like thinking of it 10, 20 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And then also like the Pomodoro method works so well because then that like couple of minutes of break, I find breaks up the time when you're like stuck. I'm like, oh, I feel stuck right now. And, when I feel stuck in those moments, I'm like, I need to keep going because I need to finish this. And then I try to keep going. And it's like, you're just digging a hole. And instead, walking around the block, I don't know about you, but like walking around the block, I'm like, wow, my brain just solved this. Or even sleeping, taking a power nap, or this is so weird. I'm a weirdo. Like, I will dream of solutions in my mind. So sometimes even going to bed and just being like, I'm just going to give up and wake up a little early. Like, I think breaking it up into chunks is like critical.
I mean, I feel like we could do an entire conversation just on how data backed it is that your brain can solve things for you while you're sleeping. So like the sleep on it is so real.
Okay,
so
wait, let's come back to that because it's fun annotation
it's
stuff.
a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. Okay, so you were talking about like breaking habits down and making them so tiny. One of my favorite things from Atomic Habits that like a version of this repeated in streaking is don't even say I'm going to run a mile. If that feels too ambitious, just say I'm going to put on my cycling shoes.
Yeah.
Because it creates the forward momentum. Because if I've put on my workout clothes and my cycling shoes, am I really not going to like clip in? And once I've clipped in, like, am I not going to move my feet at least once? And once I've done one rotation, they're already sort of in motion. So that is something that I like loved from Atomic Habits that I continue to use on days where I'm like, I do not want to ride bike, but my mental health is like, get on bike, ride it. So I'm just like, just put on this, like, don't put this whole thing on yourself. Don't put all this pressure and burden on yourself. Just put on your shoes. That's the only thing that you're required to do, and give yourself permission to change your mind. If you put on your shoes and you decide, no, like I was right the first time, I really don't want to do this, then like take your shoes off. But never have I ever taken my shoes off. I've always done at least like, 2-3 miles, done something. So I think that's so smart. There was something in the middle of that thought and the next thought that I had, but I'll come back to it. But so for the deep work, something that you said was like you read Deep Work and you felt like you needed to like put all of it into practice.
Yeah.
And I felt that so much because especially earlier in my life, earlier in my career, I would read these books that were these like New York Times best-selling books and like 100 million copies sold, and all these people were saying how it's changed their life, and I felt like I needed to embrace all of it. What I know now for sure is that all of it's not for me. Like maybe like especially like 4-hour work week, which I did not like, but there were like 2 or 3 things from it that I was like, oh, these are the things that I need, or like 10 times better than 2 times. It's not for me. I'm not trying to 10 times. I'm trying to work a 4-hour work week, but there's like a couple things. And I think for deep work, like the keeping my Slack silent and closed and then coming back to it, like depending on what type of work I'm doing, like if it's something where I'm interacting with somebody, maybe I'll open it every hour, but still like there's nothing that can't wait 1 hour for me to respond. For my emails, I respond to my emails in batch. That's actually my email responder is like I practice Cal Newport's deep work email method. So it is likely to take a few days for me to respond to your email, but like rest assured I got it. But what I have found, I was taking notes on like stuff I'm going to do my next batch of content on. And what I realized is that this year I passed 10 years of meditating almost every single day, which is crazy. But I mentioned that.
I think the crazier part is like people who don't meditate.
Well, I mean, their poor little brains. Which is a whole other conversation, because when people think meditate, they think they need to sit on a mat for like 10 minutes. The way I meditate most days is that I put on my calm.calm app first thing in the morning, and I do it lying in bed to like,
Me too.
Right? So like people make it into these like things that are much harder to achieve than what it needs to be. But I share that because practicing focus,
yeah,
and doing it as like a habit that I am committed to improving over the course of 10 years plus, like that's how I now do focused work sessions. So,
yeah.
Right? So it isn't like I just one day was like, hey, guess what, everybody? I can do 4 hours of focused work at once. It was like, I'm going to try 10 minutes, and that's going to feel hard to do one thing for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to get to 25 minutes, and then I'm going to really be in a flow with Pomodoro and feel really good about myself. Then I'm going to try an hour and like see how that works. So it has been like, just to like level set with everybody here. I'm like, deep work is amazing. To get to this point where I can do a 4-hour session of batch creation and be like locked in and productive the whole time, it has taken me a decade of practice.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I don't know what your experience was, but you noted that like doing 10 minutes is going to be very difficult the first time, because like that's exactly, and like I think even working in those 10-minute blocks, it shows you everything that you struggle with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I struggle a lot. I've like deeply rooted anxiety from childhood. And one thing that you were mentioning was like making it easy for yourself. And I think also like, what is the goal of it? Because like what I'm hearing as well, and something I deeply believe, is that people think that deep work is working for 3 hours, but the goal is not like the time frame. The goal is not I need to do a time block, like honestly, sometimes I do like, actually sometimes my most productive ones are like, I have 30 minutes before a meeting. I'm going to do a 20-minute, just like jam out.
Yeah.
Get as much done as possible. And then I'm like, ooh, I feel amazing, Sometimes like the 3 hours, also like for non-consultants, like sometimes that feels impossible almost, But I think that the entire goal is what you said, focus. The entire goal is a complete lifelong journey to work in a focused way, and to, I think, like recognize that the entirety of sales and the entirety of sales cultures and corporate America today does not facilitate, does not support focus.
No.
And if you just realize those.
That was the thought I lost earlier, was that like writing my book is a perfect example of how to both do and not do time blocks. That people would be like, oh, are you like, your time blocking out your writing time? How many hours a day are you writing? And I was like, well, first of all, 0% chance I'm writing every single day.
Yeah.
I need space for like thoughts to think themselves, so that when I go back to writing, it's ready. But I would block at least 2 hours every single Friday, and it would generally be held as writing time. But then at the beginning of the week, I would choose a specific thing to write. You're writing on this chapter.
Yeah.
You are writing this story. So like, even in that context, I wasn't showing up putting the pressure on myself to write a book. It was like, hey, the thing that you're going to write about today is objection handling. The thing you're going to write about today is voice of customer, active listener, whatever it is, which then makes the act of staying focused much, much, much more accessible, because you've taken such a load off of your brain. You're not trying to figure out what to do with this time. And then to your point, like spinning your wheels, getting distracted, staring off into space. You're like, I'm just showing up to do this one thing. And then if I finished that, I was done. I didn't like force myself to continue to work for another 42 minutes if it only took me an hour and 18 to do the task that I showed up to do that day.
And what you're talking about is also like what are you focusing on? And I feel like a lot of people, when they try to do deep work, they're just so focused on the practice of like, I'm going to do deep work, but like, on what, you know? And so many people, like I said, like they're just like, I'm going to prospect. Well, what is prospecting? Are you, you know, like I actually recommend like breaking. I literally, this is sometimes I do things for salespeople and I'm like, oh, but you know how to do that. And it's
Not correct.
no, they don't. So I literally just did an exercise with people where, I mean, these are like people selling like 500K deals, like millions of dollars in quota. And I just took like a prospecting, like we've been working on a segmented prospecting. So like I kind of created a repeatable set of micro steps. Get your account list, get your contact list, literally link them here, and like literally micro steps. And then we actually broke out deep work, kind of like, hey, how much time do you think you can like dedicate per day or, you know, per week, whatever. And then I was like, you know, this one I think is going to be about 30 minutes of work if you just like, you know, like get your accounts and then you research accounts and then you do, you know, a little bit of personalization. And literally we broke out those into time blocks, and then they could like stack them. You know, this one is kind of a micro time block. This is 20 minutes. This is 30 minutes. This is an hour. And then they could kind of stack them or break them out, you know, according to how much time they have. But I feel like a lot of people get so overwhelmed because, to your point, they're like, I'm going to like work on proposals. I'm going to prospect. And I do like micro lists. I'm like, this is so silly, but one thing I've been doing, because I was pressuring myself a lot to get things done, but like to complete them. And so I actually just started taking out the word, like at the end of like my little, you know, this is what I'm going to do. I just put progress. And that has been so lovely. I'm like, all I need to do is make progress on this thing. I might not finish it, but I'm going to like, you know, take active steps to work on it, to open it, and like to make work. Are you an ADHDer?
Yeah, I was not diagnosed until my late 20s though. So I mean, which is like really, really, really common for women. So maybe I was like, I'd been in Chicago for a few years. Like I'd already been working with that therapist for a few years. So maybe at like 27, but I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD, just ADD. So I guess I'm not
very related.
Hyper. There's no hyper part of it. It's just me like staring off into the middle distance and then having somebody be like, hello, are you still here? I'd be like,
yeah.
No, I was thinking about a conversation that I had in 4th grade. What do you mean?
I'm the opposite. So like I was at a conference and these women were like, oh, we think you have ADHD. And I was like, okay, well, like, I don't think you're a psychiatrist. But I listened to like a ton of podcasts about it and I was like, I don't know. No, I just have rampant anxiety, like very deeply rooted, crippling anxiety from some childhood trauma. And so for me, it's more so like I just read this incredible book on perfectionism and they cover 5 different types of perfectionism. I used to be, I can't remember what it was called. I used to be this one type where like you were like mean to yourself. And you're just like, I think it's called intense perfectionism, where I would just like blame other people for being lazy. I would like be a workaholic and just like do everything all at once. Now I'm a procrastinator perfectionist where I just have such crippling anxiety about doing it the right way that I like struggle with getting started. So you can imagine my time blocking is like, I mean, I think it's a really interesting conversation around how does your neurodivergence and even, you know, disorders like anxiety impact time blocking? And those are really important things. What you said earlier, Leslie, about like not every book is going to be for you. I think a lot of times, like, I definitely was like, I'm just not disciplined. I've said that for so long, but it wasn't until I like have really been working on my anxiety that I've realized like I need to pair anxiety work with the way that I work, you know, in terms of like time blocking for anxiety. That'd be a fun little listicle. Yeah.
I love that. I think, yeah, I think that is like like a beautiful reminder that like even these books that are these bestsellers that have sold a million copies, whatever, just because people like them doesn't mean that they are necessarily for you. And even if you like the book, it doesn't mean that all of it needs to be applicable. I think it's very much figuring out what you can realistically incorporate into your like life workflow. Like what are those realistic habits and actions that you can take on? Like with that being said, like as somebody who does struggle with attention,
Yeah.
I think, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but like very few things annoy me as much as somebody's like, well, I just can't focus, I have ADHD. And I'm like, maybe what you meant to say was like, I haven't learned how to master focus yet. Or like, I struggle with focus. But it's like the same as people who are like, oh, I don't know, I'm just late. It's just who I am as a person. Or like, I don't know. I'm just like not, I just can't remember anybody's names. I'm not a good listener. And they like almost brag about having a lack of these soft skill sets. And it's not like you don't just have it or not have it, you have it on a spectrum. And if it's something that you have already noticed that you struggle with, attention or listening or whatever it is, that means you need to put work into like finding remedies to it, unless you just want to be the person that's like always late or never finishes a task. And that has been, I mean, like, especially the last 10 years, but even before that,
Yep.
It's been like I have put so much. When I had started therapy and like journaling and like loose meditation and yoga, all of that, like way before the past decade. The past decade is when I was like, I need to get more serious and like regimen. I need to create a little bit more like structure and accountability around how important I think that skills like active listening and like being on time for stuff are. I don't know, it like really bothers me when people just dismiss accountability because it doesn't come easy to them.
Okay, I am so glad you said that because I was like, this was in my mind. I was like, the real answer too is that it's funny to me. I see it a lot with ADHD, and like I think it's almost the same as saying like, oh, I'm just like not good at sales. I just like won't hit my quota.
Yes.
Like
what?
You know, you need to say like, hey, I actually recognize that I'm struggling, that I'm not very naturally good at this, and I need to put in work to work on it. And I mean, I've also seen it show up in like, for example, relationships where, oh God, I'm like, my ex went to therapy enough to realize how to like gaslight me more, where it's like, he would be like, learn enough about things where it's like triggering and all those things
like
to be
boundaries and holding space. And you're like,
this is a boundary for me. You're not allowed to do this. And I was like, that's not how a boundary works, you know? But I think like a lot of like pop psychology has turned this way. And for me, as someone with crippling anxiety, I'm not just like, hey, sorry, I have crippling anxiety. I just like can't function. I'm like, nope. Hey, I'm actually, the reason that I have such crippling anxiety, especially right now, is because I'm doing so much work on my anxiety. And I literally just realized it. I mean, I have like had an awful month of stress, of things that I can't control. Like it's been a nightmare. And I just had some like really massive reflections where I was like, oh wow, I've been doing so much active work on my anxiety to like very heavy somatic and parts therapy that I'm like feeling my body now. And I'm like, oh, this is awful, you know? So like, but I think that a very common misconception when you learn these things about you is like kind of treating a diagnosis as an excuse. Is that like horrible?
Yeah, well, and it's often a self-diagnosis, which makes it, I think, even more.
There's a lot of studies about this from like TikTok self-diagnosis. Have you seen oh my God, have you seen the TikTok? Like my cousin sent me this where it's like, I think I have ADHD. Like anyone who has 3 cups on their desk at all times has ADHD. And
Or they're just thirsty.
I was like, or they just like different drinks. But actually, if anyone's really interested in this, there's an incredible podcast series called Backfired. And they do like the vape wars, but they also have an entire series where they do a very journalistic deep dive into multiple sides. Oop, am I back?
Okay.
Multiple sides of ADHD, like the incredible stories of ADHD diagnoses and medications being effective. And also a lot of these things where it's like, you know, even more and more people getting diagnosed with ADHD, like people not being able to get medicine. There's a lot of different perspectives on it. But I think overall, like, what we were kind of coming to was,
I'm not sure I'm going to take another podcast recommendation because the one that you recommended earlier this week, I felt personally victimized by.
oh my God, I was actually, this is so weird, but I was hoping we would talk about cults today.
Spoiler alert, it was a podcast on cults because I'm like a ride or die soul cycle girly, and Meg was like, oh, I have the podcast for you. And then those girls were so freaking mean. But I listened to one more episode after that because I was like, I want to
You're like, I'm getting personally triggered by this episode.
Correct. But so I listened to the one after that about incels, which somehow they had like a much, like they were way more fair. And
it sounds like they were very judgy about soul cycle.
They were so mean, and they hadn't even done it.
Yeah.
And it was like, they'd be hating from outside the club, bitches.
I love how you were like, I know that I sound like a cult member by saying this, but like it's Soul Cycle's amazing. But yeah, we were talking about cults. And I've read multiple books by this one author. So the podcast host, Amanda something, she's actually a friend of a friend from New Jersey, but she actually studies cults and studies, especially she was an English major, and she studies how cults use language to brainwash, to manipulate. And so because we were talking about like ChatGPT being a cult,
and like the cult of sass language, where they just make up so many terms, and if you don't know them, they shame you for not knowing a weird term that they made up instead of just describing something like a normal person.
Yeah, even companies have their own stuff. Like I had a seller who was selling to Amex, and I remember like one of his first sales calls with them, he was like, "Hey, I'm so sorry, I don't know that term." And the sales leaders at the company were like, why are you admitting that you don't know something? You're so stupid. Like that was like kind of the vibe. And but it was like a 3-second vibe, like shut your mouth, like don't admit that you don't know what they're talking about. And the client at Amex was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We have we have our own internal language. Like it's totally meaningless. I could send you over like a total translation and a little like dictionary for Amex terms. But, you know, so many people are deeply afraid of admitting that they don't know something. And I feel like as a consultant, it's kind of catty, but I think it's so personally fulfilling when someone's just like using terms and terms and terms. You're like, oh, what do you mean by that? And they're like, oh, you don't know this? And when it's like, oh, so what you actually mean is just like, and you just simplify it. And because, I mean, we've seen this over and over, like in sales as well. When people, I see it a lot. The way I train in elevator pitches, I'm like, don't tell marketing. The way I used to train elevator pitches is I would show people, like start the entire conversation being like, hey, here's the marketing pitch. And I literally was like, this is a safe space. Don't tell marketing that I'm doing this. But like, here's the pitch. What do you think about it? And they're like, oh, it's so good. I was like, what does it mean? And people are like, I mean, I haven't been here that long. I just don't, I don't know. And I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. Your clients don't know either. These are words.
Website where you're like, what do you even sell? What does this even mean?
Like, I feel like we should just have like all these words that just like need to be struck from the vernacular.
Yeah, it's a yes for me. Well, I think we were talking about this weeks ago, but one of my like series on TikTok ages ago that did really really well was like SAS quizzes. Like,
Yeah.
okay, what does CAC mean? Okay, what is whatever it was, and people were like, and what I thought was especially hilarious about it is that people would type different definitions, but like all of them were correct. And I'm like, okay, this just proves how hilarious it is. Okay, we are at time. So let's do two big celebrations because we each have a big one to share. I will go first and then you can wrap. My big one is that I'm gonna drop it in the comments. My book is live to purchase.
Yes, I already bought mine pre-order.
Thank you. Okay, I just put it in the, maybe did I put it in the, I think I put it in the comments. I did, there we go. So it is in the comments, folks. It is salesledgtm.com/book. And when you order, like, first of all, thank you for like being part of this pre-launch support. I'm tracking towards being a USA Today bestselling author, but like literally every single sale counts because they look heavily at books sent to individual addresses, like purchased by individual credit cards versus like just the total number of orders. So literally every single book counts. So thank you so much. And thanks to our besties over at Brand Builders, I like worked in some freebies and stuff. So anybody that orders that also gets like $400+ in freebies. Plus, if you are in Tampa, Chicago, London, or Great Falls, Montana, I'm doing a live one that you can come to as my guest as well. So it's been a serious journey getting the single unit order page up. Getting like there was a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, way more than I realized. So this, I know I still have like 2.5 months of sprinting to go, but this felt like a particularly significant milestone.
I feel like it is wild to me that you're already like, oh yeah, in September I'll start writing the new book, and I'm like, that's like when you're pregnant with one kid and you're like, oh my god, I'm also like, and then I'll have 1 month off and then I'll get pregnant with the next baby, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
you know a lot of people with Irish twins.
So psycho. I love it. I'm so excited. I actually am really sad though that like I'm gonna have you sign my copy so I can have like a signed copy when I see you next.
In February at the latest.
Yes. So my big celebration, oh my gosh. So I bought an Aura camera and people are like, what the hell is that? So, even just prefacing, like I help a lot of sellers with energy work, but a lot of times like everything we've talked about today, like it's really difficult to know what your energy actually is. But I bought a camera, very, very expensive camera that has biometric sensors for your hands. And it takes, it translates biometric data like, heart rate and your body temperature, things like that. And then actually puts it into a visual representation based on the colors of the chakra system. So if it's like very deeply red, like my first one is, it's like, girl, you are burning out. Something needs to change. I was like, no, it's fine. I'm fine. It's like, no, can we just like admit that you're not?
I dropped your post with a sample picture into the chat now too for folks to reference.
Yeah. So overall, I'm really excited. It's been something that's been super helpful and meaningful for me over the years. And also I think like, if you think about team events, I think we're all really tired of like just catering and a happy hour. So if you're looking for something really fun, unique, and interesting for your team, I'm also doing team events where we like actually take photos of all of your team's auras. We map your energy across your team, see how you can work together. So super exciting. It's been a dream. I told you, Leslie, and you're like, oh my God, you talked about that like 5 years ago. Literally 5 years ago. I remember 2020. So
exciting. I would literally lose my mind if I walked into an event and that was the experiential thing that they did.
I've heard at conferences it's always like a massive line.
Yeah, like I don't need another like inscribed hat or like another journal that's the wrong size.
You want to see demos?
Like I don't need any of those things. What I need is an experience with this Aura camera.
Same.
All right,
I have like 3 of mine hanging on my wall right now. So
yes.
so nice.
Thank you all so much for being here and joining us. As a reminder, we are here every fourth Friday of the month around noon-ish in the early afternoon adjacent time spot. So we will see you all next month. And just a huge thank you to everybody. Bye, team.
Bye, y'all.